declared dead by her husband while still breathing. A Lakota chief found her and spoke her name. The ground was frozen solid the morning I found her. Not a soft freeze, the kind that gives a little underfoot. Iron freeze. The kind that comes in off the northern plains and locks everything down to bone depth. The kind where you can hear the creek not running because it has stopped entirely somewhere under 2 feet of ice. I had been riding since before first light, out past the western edge of my people's winter camp, because 3 of our horses had gone through the night, and I was tracking them before the cold ate their prints. I almost rode past her. She was in a low draw, half under a cut bank, and there was snow over most of her. Not buried, more like the wind had been considerate, had laid a thin blanket across her legs and her middle. Her face was turned to the side and pressed against the frozen dirt, and her hair, which was the color of prairie grass in late autumn, was loose and spread out, and had frozen into the ground around her head like she'd been staked there. I got down. I did not think, not in words. A man does not think in words when he kneels beside something like that. I pressed 2 fingers to her neck the way my grandmother taught me to check game, to see whether you were still dealing with the living world or already with the dead one. Pulse faint, irregular, but there. I pulled my knife and cut her hair free from the ground, not quickly, carefully, because I did not want to tear it from her scalp, and I got my arms under her and stood. She weighed less than I expected. That was a bad sign. A person should have more weight to them than that. I put her across my horse in front of me and rode back to camp. I want to say something about that ride because people have asked me about it since, and I have never answered them well. My horse's name was Stones in the River, a gray gelding with a chest like a barrel and the best ground-eating walk of any animal I have ever owned. I had my arms around this woman. I did not know to hold her on the horse, and I could feel the cold coming off her, which is different from the ordinary cold of the air. A person who is near to dying of cold feels cold in a specific way, not like stone, like something that was once warm and has had that warmth extracted, like an empty house. I rode, and I did not let myself think about what I might find when I got back to camp. I just rode and held her on the horse and watched the ground. Her name, I learned later, was Clara. But I did not know that yet. My Aunt Running Deer was the one who worked on her. I will not pretend I did it. I carried her in. I laid her on the robes near the fire, and then Running Deer took over and I stood back because that was the right thing to do. Running Deer was 60 years old and had seen more winters than most people alive in that territory, and she knew what frozen nearly dead looked like and what to do about it. She drove the other women out, not unkindly but firmly. She kept only my niece Yellow Bird, who was 14 and good-handed. She told me to bring water, not hot, she said, warm like a summer creek, no hotter, and then she told me to go outside and wait. I went outside and waited. The camp was in its winter arrangement, the lodges in their particular order, the smoke holes open, the smell of wood fire and drying meat and horses on the air. A few of the children who were awake watched me standing outside my aunt's lodge with the look children have when they know something unusual has happened and they are deciding whether to ask about it. I shook my head at them, not unkindly. They went back to what they were doing. My brother Hawkfeather came and stood beside me. He had heard I came in carrying a white woman and he wanted to know what I knew. I told him what I knew, which was nothing. He stood with me for a while without talking, which was the right thing. Hawkfeather has always understood when to speak and when not to. After a while he said in Lakota, "She is not dead." "No," I said. "She should be." "Yes." We stood a while longer, then he went back to his lodge. I do not know how long I stood there. Long enough that the light changed, that the sun got up past the tree line to the east, and the air went from gray to the particular pale gold of a winter morning after a hard night. Long enough that my feet went numb inside my moccasins, even though I am not a man who usually feels the cold much. Running Deer came out and looked at me. She will live, she said. I breathed out. I had not known I was holding something in. She was beaten, Running Deer said, watching me carefully. Before the cold, someone put marks on her, ribs, face, here. She indicated her own temple, and she has been outside at least one full night, maybe two. How far could she have walked? I asked. Running Deer thought about it. In that condition, not far, maybe 4 or 5 miles. Maybe less. I looked west, toward where I had found her. There was a homestead out that direction, 8 or 9 miles. I had ridden past it in the fall, a raw operation, a man and a woman trying to put in a claim on land that was going to beat them badly. I remembered the man. I remembered the set of him, the particular way some men have of watching their own property. I did not say any of this to Running Deer, but I thought it. Sleep, Running Deer told me. She will not wake today. She will not wake tomorrow. When she wakes, you will need to be rested. Why me? Running Deer looked at me with the expression she has used on me since I was 4 years old, the one that means the question I just asked is too simple to deserve an answer. Then she went back inside. I went and slept. She woke on the 3rd day. I was there when it happened because Running Deer had sent for me. Not because she thought I needed to be there. Running Deer rarely does things on sentiment. But because she had decided that a man's voice was what was needed first. That a woman who had been put where this one was put should not wake to only women's faces, should not have her first waking moment be confirmation that she was entirely without any male protection in the world. That was Running Deer's reasoning. She told me this plainly, the way she tells me everything. So I was there. Clara, I would learn her name within the hour, opened her eyes, and the first thing she looked at was the smoke hole above her, through which a small square of winter sky was visible. Then she looked at the lodge walls, the hides, the painted figures on them. Then she looked at Running Deer and then at Yellow Bird. Then she looked at me. I am a large man. I have been told this my whole life, as though I might not have noticed. And I was sitting at the edge of her vision in a Lakota winter lodge with my hair loose, and the marks of my status on my skin and in my dress, and she had last been conscious being beaten by her husband on a frozen plain. I understood what I must look like to her. I understood what her body was probably telling her to do. She did not bolt. She did not scream. She looked at me for a long time, 5 full breaths, 6, and something moved across her face that I could not read entirely. A calculation. A decision being made from very limited materials. Then she said, in a voice scraped nearly to nothing from cold, "Where am I?" "Safe," I said in English. "You are safe." Her face did something then that I have thought about many times in the years since. Not relief. Relief comes easier, comes loose. This was something harder and more careful, like a person who has been told a piece of news they wanted badly, but who has learned not to believe things until they have tested them with their own hands. She was listening to the word safe the way you listen to ice when you step onto a lake in early spring. Pressing gently, waiting to hear whether it will hold. "My name is Mapiachenku," I told her. "Rode through the sky. You are in my family's winter camp. My aunt found your wounds. You have been 3 days sleeping." She looked at Running Deer when I said my aunt, then back at me. "I remember," she said slowly, "walking." "Yes. I thought I was dying." "You nearly were." Another long pause. Her hand, which was under the robe, moved slightly, checking the state of her own body the way wounded people do when they first come back, taking inventory. "My ribs," she said. 3 broken, bound now. "My face." "Healing." She was quiet for a moment, then, "He told the Hendersons I died. I heard him say it. I heard him from the barn when he rode over." A pause. "I was in the barn. He'd put me in the barn." I did not say anything. There was nothing to say to that. "He told them I died of the fever," she said. "In November." She said it the way you say something you are still turning over, still trying to fit the shape of it into the shape of the world as you understood it. "It's January." Yes. He told everyone I died in November, she said, and it's January. Yes. She closed her eyes, not to sleep, her jaw was too set for sleep. She was doing something behind those closed eyes, working something through. When she opened them again, she looked straight at me, and there was a quality to that look that I want to describe correctly, and am not sure I can. It was not the look of a woman who has decided to trust a man because she has no other options and he is the least threatening thing available. It was not gratitude of the helpless kind. It was direct. The look of a person who has just made an assessment and arrived at a conclusion, and is now proceeding from that conclusion. Thank you, she said, for bringing me in. Yes, I said. I don't have anything to offer you. I didn't bring you in for anything, I said. The ground was frozen and you were breathing. That's the whole of it. Something shifted in her face at that, small, but I saw it. She stayed 4 weeks. Running Deer would not hear of anything else, and frankly, there was nowhere for her to go. The nearest town of any size was 30 miles east through country that would kill an able-bodied man on a bad day. Clara's ribs needed time. Her hands had been frostbitten, not badly, but enough that 2 of her fingers on the left hand were still giving her trouble at 2 weeks out. The cold itself had done something to her lungs that Running Deer monitored without saying much about. She listened to Clara's breathing each morning and evening with an expression of focused neutrality that told me she was not entirely satisfied. Clara was not a complaining woman. She was not a passive woman either. By the 6th day she was asking Running Deer what she could do. By the 8th she was doing it, careful work, right-handed work mostly, things that did not require her ribs or her left hand. She had some Lakota within a week, not words exactly but the sounds of it, the rhythms. Yellow Bird was fascinated by her, and spent hours sitting near her talking in a mixture of Lakota and bad English, that they both found funnier than it should have been. I was mostly at a careful distance. This is the honest part, and I want to say it honestly. I was the chief of my band. I was 39 years old, and I had been a widower for 4 years, my wife Painted Stone having died of the sickness that came through in the summer of my 35th year. I had 3 children who were grown or nearly grown. I was not a lonely man in the way of men who have no one. I had my people, my family, my responsibilities. But I was a man who had stopped imagining certain things as possible and had made his peace with that, or thought he had. I watched Clara from a careful distance, and I was honest with myself about what I was doing and why I was doing it. A man my age, a man who has been through what I had been through, knows when he is giving himself reasons to be somewhere he wants to be. I did not manufacture reasons. I simply let the natural business of running a winter camp bring me to my aunt's lodge with regularity, because that was where much of the business happened. Clara saw what I was doing. I know she saw it because one evening, we were 3 weeks in, the light was going, the fire was burning low in the lodge, and Running Deer had gone to sleep early, and Yellow Bird was with her mother, and it was just the 2 of us with the sound of the wind outside. She looked up from the moccasin she was sewing, which Running Deer had put her to work on mostly to give her hand something useful, and she said, "Your wife died." Not a question. Running Deer had told her, or Yellow Bird had. I did not mind. 4 years ago. She looked back at the moccasin, several stitches, then, what was she like? No one had asked me that, in 4 years. People spoke of Painted Stone with respect, and with sadness because she had been well loved, but no one had simply asked me what she was like as though they wanted to know for its own sake. I thought about how to answer it. Patient, I said finally. Funnier than she looked, she had a way of seeing through things that used to make me feel very seen. Clara considered this. That's a good way to describe a person, she said. She was a good person to describe. Quiet again, the wind, the fire settling. My husband, Clara said, not looking up from the sewing, was not the man I thought he was when I married him. I want you to understand I'm not stupid. I had reasons for thinking what I thought, but I was wrong. People are wrong about people, I said. It isn't stupidity. Some people are built to conceal. He's going to come looking eventually. I had thought about this. He told your neighbors you were dead. If he comes looking, he's explaining why the dead have come back. She looked up then. The firelight was on the side of her face and her eyes were very steady. He'll make something up. Yes, people like that usually do. Will he, she paused, started again. Are your people in danger if he comes here? I looked at her for a moment. The question itself, that she was asking that question, that her first concern was my people and not herself, said something about her that I took note of and filed away. No, I said, he is not. The flatness in my voice when I said it seemed to be the answer she needed. She nodded once and looked back at the moccasin. I don't know what I'm going to do, she said quietly. I don't have family to go back to. My parents are both dead. I have no money. He'll have sold or ruined everything by now. A pause. I'm not telling you this as a problem for you to solve. I am trying to be honest about what my situation is. I know, I said. I'm 31 years old, she said. I feel much older than that. 39, I said. She looked at me, not quite understanding. I feel much older than that too, I said. And then Clara, who had been a composed and careful and watchful woman for 3 weeks, laughed. Not a polite laugh. A real one, sudden, that she seemed almost surprised by, that she put her hand over her mouth to contain and then gave up containing. And I found, which surprised me somewhat, that I was laughing too, a thing I had not done, not genuinely, in some time. Running Deer, who was apparently not as asleep as she had appeared, made a small contented sound from the other side of the lodge and said nothing. Thomas Reed came in the first week of February. He did not come alone. He came with 2 men I did not recognize, though I learned later that one of them was a deputy from the county seat, and the other was a man named Gaskill who had worked for Reed the previous fall before they had some kind of falling out. He came with papers, some kind of legal document he had obtained. I could only guess how, probably through the same combination of charm and dishonesty that had sustained him this long. He came to the camp and he asked for me by name. Whatever he had done, he had been thorough enough in his preparation to learn my name. I went out to meet him. He was a medium-built man, perhaps 40, the kind of man who looks reasonable until you have watched him for 2 minutes. Not ugly, not threatening in any obvious physical way. The deputy looked embarrassed to be there. Gaskill looked like a man who had been hired to look large and was fulfilling that function. Reed looked at me and said, I've come for my wife. Your wife, I said, died in November. You told her neighbors that yourself. A pause. He had not expected that to come back at him so cleanly. He recalibrated. There was a misunderstanding, he said. I was told she died. I later learned she survived. I've been trying to find her since. She was found on frozen ground, I said, with broken ribs and frostbite, after at least 1 night outside in a January cold that would kill most men. She did not walk there from anywhere but your homestead. Now look. I am going to tell you one thing, I said, and I made my voice the way I make it when I am speaking in council, not loud, not hard, but with a particular quality of weight, the way a stone has weight when you put it down. And you are going to hear it entirely before you speak. Your wife has been declared dead by your own words to her neighbors. Under those words, her claim to your marriage and your property and your name is finished. Under those same words, you have no legal wife to recover. You came here for a dead woman. I suggest you go back to where you came from and go on telling people she is dead. It will be simpler for everyone. The deputy was looking at the ground. He was a young man, and he seemed to be having some internal experience. Reed looked at me for a long moment. He looked at the camp behind me, at the lodge doors, at the men of my band who had come to stand in the natural way that men come to stand when something is happening. Not threateningly, Just present, just there. She's a white woman, Reed said, lower now. The reasonableness gone. She's a dead woman, I said. You said so yourself. The dead don't belong to anyone. He wanted to push further. I watched him want it. I watched him calculate, the deputy who clearly didn't want to be involved in whatever this had become, the two men against however many of mine, the legal document that was useless if his own prior statement was used against him. I watched him decide. He turned his horse. At the edge of camp he stopped and looked back. I held his look. I did not move and I did not look away and I did not say anything. He was the one who rode on. The deputy paused beside me as he followed. He was young, maybe 25, with the reddened face of a man who had been out in cold longer than was comfortable. He looked at me and then looked away and then looked at me again. She's all right, he said, quietly, not official. She's all right, I said. He nodded, he rode on. I told Clara what had happened. I told her straight, all of it, the way I would tell anyone anything, what he said, what I said, what happened at the end. I did not soften it and I did not make it larger than it was. It was a man on a horse and then a man riding away. That was the whole of it. She listened without speaking. When I finished, she sat very still for a moment. Then she looked up at me, and there was something in her face that I am trying to describe, and that I am not sure language does well with. She had been watching me for weeks the way a careful person watches things, not suspiciously, not with fear, just with attention, storing up what she observed. I had felt that watching. I had known she was making a picture of who I was from everything she saw, and now that picture was complete enough for her to do something with. You didn't have to do any of this, she said, any of it from the beginning. The ground was frozen and you were breathing, I said, the same thing I'd said the first time. Rode through the sky, she said, my name in English, which is not quite right but is close. That's not nothing. What you did is not nothing, and I want you to know that I know that. I did not say anything. There was a tightness in my chest that was not unpleasant exactly. More like a door that had been sealed for a long time was standing open, and the air coming through it was cold and clean. She stood up. Her ribs were still healing, but she was steady on her feet, had been for a week. She crossed the small distance between us and she put her hand on my chest, flat over my heart, the way you put your hand on a horse you want to calm or a child you want to reassure, except it wasn't calming or reassuring, it was something else. It was plain. It was a statement. I'm not going to pretend I don't know what I'm feeling, she said. I'm 31 years old and I've had enough of pretending things. I put my hand over hers, just that, my hand over hers on my chest. Running deer will be insufferable about this, I said. Clara looked at me with the steady, amused, seeing look that I would come to know as well as anything in my life. She already is, she said. She stayed. That is the short version of a long thing. She stayed through the end of that winter, and she was there when the camp moved in the spring, and she was there in the summer camp, and when the second winter came she was mine, and I was hers in the way that my people mark such things. With the ceremony my aunt arranged with an expression of satisfaction so thorough it was nearly aggressive. There are people who will want me to tell you about the difficulties. The looks from some quarters, the questions, the winter when the agent came through and there was a week of uncertainty about papers and rights and what her presence in a Lakota camp meant under the current law. I could tell you about all of that. It was real. It happened. But it is not the story. The story is what it is to be a man who has put away certain hopes because he was done with the hurt of them, and to have a woman find you anyway. Find you in the particular way she found me, which was not by accident and not out of need. She had made a choice, eyes open, knowing what the world would think of it, and she had made it plainly and without apology. I was 53 when my second daughter was born. My children from my first marriage, my daughter Brightwater, my sons Carries the Fire and Looking Glass. They came in their time to love their stepmother with the particular rough affection of grown children who respect someone their parent chose. Brightwater and Clara quarreled sometimes, two strong women finding their footing, and then they were closer than before, which is usually how it goes with strong women. I am old now. Clara's hair went gray before mine did, and she was indignant about this in a way that I found very funny and was careful to laugh at only when she couldn't see me. She moves a little slower. So do I. Her left hand, the frostbitten one, aches in cold weather, and on those mornings she holds it in both hands and looks out at whatever the weather is doing with an expression of patient exasperation that is entirely her. What I want to say, and what I am not sure I can say correctly, is this. There is a particular thing that happens to a man when a woman of that quality, of that steadiness and honesty and will, looks at him and stays. Not because she has nowhere else to go. Not because he has done her a service and she is paying a debt. Because she looked and found something she wanted to put her life next to. I brought her in out of the cold because the ground was frozen and she was breathing. That was all I had in mind. What she chose after that, that was hers. But I have thought about it every day since. The look she had in Running Deer's Lodge that first morning when she was deciding whether the word safe would hold. The flat, frank, undeceivable way she looked at the world. The sound of her laugh, which she had clearly not used in some time, and which came out of her like something that had been kept in a closed space and was glad for the air. Outside now the winter is coming in again, the first real cold of the season, the kind that drops fast and means business. Clara is inside with our daughter. I can hear them talking, the low back and forth of it, and occasionally laughing about something I am not in on. The horses are settled for the night. I am a man who knows what he has.